Hey YouTube, here's Heiko reporting from my garage, again working on some random projects. This here is a Craftsman table saw, which is pretty old. I kind of researched the model. This particular model of Craftsman table saw, as you can see, it sits on a little hydraulic lift cart, is actually from the 1950s or early 1960s. I haven't been able to really pinpoint the manufacturing year, but these saws were made a little differently than what you can find these days, like let's say from Ryobi or Delta or Harbor Freight, even worse. This here is a saw that has a ground cast iron top, and those extensions here, this is an accessory. So originally the saw is only this short solid piece here, and those are accessories, extensions. Then also the whole mechanism in here, there is not a single piece of plastic or anything cheap. It's all cast materials in steel. What are they called? The shafts that kind of move the saw around, so moving the blade up and down or changing the angle of the blade. This whole mechanism is either cast or steel. So a lot of machine work went into those old table saws to make those. If you would want to try to make a table saw like this, it would probably be a couple $1,000s. Apparently the Craftsman table saws, I don't know if they still make it, but they have been making those, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s for a long time, and every decade they pretty much did a few model changes, a few things that got a little cheaper. The body sheet metal got thinner, the mechanism got a little cheaper, and then at the end they had stamped sheet metal tops, and they of course are not as straight, not as heavy. This saw, we had to live with two people, probably, don't want to exaggerate, but probably weighs around 100 pounds, 120 pounds maybe. It's really heavy, as long as this top is relatively straight, it doesn't have too many gouges and maybe even worse, a crack in it. They are solid, they are straight. The extensions here, I kind of had to adjust a little bit so that the transition where those two pieces come together, I don't have any, step in there. And then apparently the previous owner kept banging something onto the top here. But what I'm doing right now is just trying to straighten out things and clean. This here is a sharpening stone, or for your knife, from Harbor Freight, really cheap. And I'm using some oil. This says air tool oil on it, but what's actually in here is Marvel's mystery oil. I'm just using that as a lubricant, and I'm just going over the surface ever so slightly with this, with a little bit of oil, to straighten out those nicks here. There's going to be still an indentation, but at least the surface is going to be smooth. So when I slide a piece of wood over here, I'm not catching on any of those burrs. I'm going to do that on the whole entire surface. And originally it was ground this direction, so this is pretty much the grain of the cast iron top. And that's what I'm doing with my stone. I'm not using sandpaper, because sandpaper, you're just going to have an uneven pressure. If I put this stone flat down, it's flat, the surface is flat, and I'm not trying to change the geometry of this top. I'm just trying to straighten it out and get some of the rust off. It doesn't need to be pretty, but for a table saw, it's really important that the surface is smooth, so you can slide your plywood or whatever you're cutting over this and it's smooth. So de-rusting, deburring, and then after that it's gonna get a rubbed down with some paste wax. So this is an old saw, and it's a hand-me-down. I got it for free from a friend who had it sit in his garage, never used it. It came with a fence system, which is sitting here on the ground. Sorry, my garage is a mess, but anyways, so those are the rails, and this is the actual fence with the handle there. And this one is called a Paralog 2. It's a company from Oregon. They are long out of business, unfortunately. And it has a cable system with pulleys. So when you have a rib fence here and you're moving it, you're pulling on this end, and the cable system will pull the other end into the same direction. So once you have this all adjusted and the cable's all taut and parallel to your blade, you don't even see the blade, but there's a blade. I just lowered it down. After I looped all the mechanical part in this saw, it's all so easy to move now. It's really amazing how well those saws hold up. Anyways, this Paralog 2 gets pulled on both ends the same amount. So I read a couple of reviews from back in the days, like I want to say in the 90s, they were still making this. It was pretty popular because, some of those rib fences that you have, they only have a attachment point on one side and then maybe a guide on the other side. They always tend to get pushed out of the right angle that you're trying to keep. You want to stay parallel to your saw blade, and they get easily pushed out of that location. And so a lot of people like the Paralog 2. It's just really large. I mean, this is already a pretty decent size worktop here. This is 40 inches from edge to edge. That's probably big enough for all my table saw needs. This down there is 80 inches, and it's meant to start here and then extend out the other end. So it would stick out another 40 inches on that side, and that's just a little long. I'm debating whether or not I want to cut this down, sell it so that someone else can enjoy it, or buy something else, or maybe even get the original fence that came with this saw, even though people say it's not really great. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Nice old Craftsman. See this aluminum cover here? This is kind of a brushed aluminum pattern, as they did it back in those days with like little cup brushes. They would put it under a kind of like a drill press and then do every single little of those textures here with a little wire brush. It's pretty amazing. The handles are all cast material. There is absolutely not a single piece of plastic on there. The model number, oh yeah, by the way, belt driven. Motor is replaceable, of course, even with modern stuff. So if this fails, you can easily find a motor replacement. This is 220 volts, so this machine has a little bit of some oomph to it. And down there's the, you guys can see it's serial number. If I can turn the light on. There you go. Serial number 11327520. That's the model number. And this seems to be pretty popular. Yeah, you can see all those shafts here. They're all machine steel. There's not a single. The arbor actually looks pretty good. I haven't taken the blade off yet, but eventually we'll get to it. I just want to play around with it a little bit. Have to fix the electrical. This is the on-off switch here. The box is completely bent out of shape, and then someone apparently stored it sitting on the strain relief here on the cable. So I'll probably have to look into that too, that the wires are all okay. Yeah, goes into the box. Maybe I'll replace the box with a modern safety on-off switch with a stop button on it. Oh yeah, and then I also have the original miter gauge that kind of slides in those grooves here. So that's pretty good. And then it also has the, I don't know if this is original or aftermarket, but it has a table insert, aluminum. Doesn't strike me as original, but it's good enough for now, for my purposes. For now, it's just playing around with the saw and cleaning it up. So if you have one of those old Craftsman, don't underestimate those saws. They are highly regarded among, woodworkers, especially if you like vintage stuff. I mean, this is somewhere 50s, 60s, a lot of cast material in there. If you find a decent one, and sometimes people get rid of those, in like yard sales, garage sales, or on Craigslist for like $40, $50. Today I saw a listing for, this year was supposed to be the commercial model. They also had a contractor model. I saw a contractor model even with its own stand. So this is more or less a tabletop saw. They made a stand for that, which I don't have, with a stand, just a burned out motor for free. You just have to go and pick it up. And then the motor is really not that bad. And you can find those everywhere. I mean, you can find it at Harbor Freight. You can find it on eBay, Amazon probably. To fix a saw like this, if the rest is in good shape, look for rust. Rust destroys one of those. So if your arbor is all rusted up, or the linkages and all that stuff is rusted up, then, pass on that one. But if you find one that's just dusty, has been sitting indoors, go for it. 40, 50 bucks. And then you can still buy modern rip fence systems that you can adapt to those old saws and make it work for you. You don't have to spend $1,000 for a table saw. Especially this model here with a cast top. It's unbeatable. All right, that's my new project here. I mean, lots of projects. Customer vehicle. Nice old Cub Cadet International Harvester, model 169. Wasn't running, now it's running. Wasn't charging, now it's charging. Steering was sloppy, now it's not sloppy anymore. Yeah, it could use a little bit of some TLC. I mean, a new seat. One of the taillights is missing. That's eventually going to happen, I think. My customer, he likes old stuff. This machine is so well built, it's unbelievable. Like, you should see this is like, what, 1/4-inch plate here. This is so heavy. And this is 1979. Already has a hydrostatic drive, reverse and forward. And runs really well and really quiet, because this is a 16-horse single-cylinder Kohler engine. They were able to put a really big muffler in there, so it's really quiet compared to some of the modern stuff. I really like it, actually. Anyways, that's what I'm working on. I haven't made a video in a while because, life is busy. But I'll try to increase the rate a little bit and catch up with you guys more often. All right. Have a good one. Take care.